Are you gay? Are you gay just to establish for the debate?
No, I'm straight. Unlike you,
Okay.
I'm empathetic. I'm able to place myself in other people's shoes and see the world from a perspective and realize
You
what's
empathize.
wrong,
You place
even when
yourself
I'm
in
not
gay people's shoes.
Yeah, and I
So
can
you
see how
imagine
terrible
what it
people
would
like
be
you are.
like to be gay.
No, I imagine what it would be like to be at the receiving end of your
The
fucking
receiving
tyranny.
end.
Of
You
your
empathize
fucking
with the
tyranny.
receiving end.
Nick Fuentes is one of the most polarizing figures out there right now, and I think that's exactly how he wants it. I've watched hours of his debates and podcasts in just the last few days, and while I agree with a lot of his core ideology, I also see the way he delivers it is just as important as the ideas themselves. So, I've only known about Nick Fuentes for the past 3 days. I've seen about 3 podcasts that he was in. The first impression that I got of him was the podcast he had with Bradley Martin, and just from that alone, he seemed like a very down-to-earth guy. You know, he's a very knowledgeable man. You can't say that he isn't. The main things I agree with him is his theology for Jesus and the Bible. He's a religious guy, and what I like that is he makes that very clear in every podcast. So he doesn't shy away from him being religious. He's very open about believing in Jesus Christ and why he does and why it's like a good decision to. So as I realized he was a believer, beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. Well, I do know that's true. That's why I'm not like praising this guy or whatever, but I guess what really caught to me was in the Bradley Martin interview, he explains basically like all like the beef he's been in and all stuff like that. And he was saying how he likes the type of humor that he likes is the one where you're laughing at it and you kind of have this feeling where you shouldn't be laughing at it, but you can't help but laugh at it. And he says that's exactly what he goes for, and I realize he does that very well. He says things that are very out of line and out of pocket. I can't even lie. It's very out of pocket. But sometimes you look at it and you're like, what, like, what are you talking about, bro? There's no way you just said that. You know what I'm saying? And it gives me that vibe. And I can't even lie. It makes me laugh sometimes too. Like, for example, the debate that he had with Dean Withers and the one Aiden Ross and Sneeko organized it. It started off so respectful and very informative. Very informative. They both know what they're talking about. And then it went to just this rage baiting, like just rage baiting back and forth. That I can't even lie. Nick Fuentes is very good at rage baiting. He knows what he's doing, and it's very hard not to laugh at it. It's just hilarious, dude. And whether you love him or you hate him, like, I was gonna say you can't say that he's not funny. Of course you can say that, but the only reason I say that that you can say that he's not funny is because he kind of has this taboo humor, and nowadays, it's very problematic to have a humor like that because you're labeled right away as this type of person if you think this is funny or if you agree with this, right? I mean, if you were to do that 10 to 15 years ago, there wasn't that big of a cancel culture type stuff, right? It's not as big now as it was kind of like 4 to 6 years ago, but even now it still happens. That's why he's still canceled now. The thing is, he's not only hated in the left, he's super hated on the right just as much, and that's because of the things he has to say. He has a lot of factual things that he says, and whether you like it or you don't like it, a lot of what he says are facts and are real. So that's all I'm gonna say. I'm not taking into account anything that he's going to say specifically. You can go do your own research for yourselves. I just want to talk about him because he's a very big topic right now, and I just learned about him because of how big of a topic he is right now. I think he pushes boundaries on purpose to kind of keep people's attention, to make sure he stays within like he stays relevant to a certain extent, because he's not on YouTube, he's not on like Twitch. I think he can't be on TikTok and things like that. He just gets banned right away, dude. And I've heard his backstory of like, they released his address. People were going to his house. He almost got shut up, stuff like that. You know what I mean? So that shows the type of trouble that he's got himself in. But with the way he says things, it reminds me a lot of what Peterson says. And it says, what Peterson says is like, don't let the cat hold your tongue. Okay. The biggest adventure you can go on is speaking your truth. The thing is, you have to realize that speaking your truth doesn't mean you're right. That is just, you're just speaking what you think it to be true. And with that is going to come a lot of consequences. But I would say, that's the journey of it. That's that's like what's fun about it, right? And he's not afraid to do that. He'll say what he has to say no matter who gets in his way. And he does truly believe what he says. While a lot of it's very out there, but I think on purpose is to create a reaction so he could further explain what he really means by that. And he does that very well. You can't admit that he's not a good speaker. And for him to be only 26 years old and to be that type of like to be that kind of knowledgeable in this space at that time, like he's been doing it since he was 18 on his America First podcast. I think that's what it's called. And like, so he's been in the game for a long time. I do think where it can go kind of wrong with his like, you know, humor and his belief in Christianity and stuff like that is like a kind of mix between sin and truth. You know what I mean? Where it's like, you do have to realize like, which I think he's kind of come to the conclusion now, he doesn't rage bait as much as he did before. Or at least when he was way younger, he was much more aggressive in his approach to be funny. And now, you know, it's not like he doesn't do the same now, but it's, I think, way less than he did before, at least from what he says. You just want to make sure. And I forgot what I saw this on TikTok. Listen, I don't want to be TikTok brain rotted right now, but I remember I saw an Instagram reel or TikTok or whatever, and it said how rage baiting is a sin, and he is in fact doing that. So, you know what I mean? You got to make sure that you while you're trying to speak your truth and making sure that you want to come, when you're speaking your truth, it's because you want to find the actual truth, right? So the whole premise and the whole purpose of speaking your truth is to actually get to the objective truth, right? So I do think that's why he's very controversial, because when he speaks his truth, he says it in a very taboo, big way, but then further explains what he means by it. But he says it in that way to grab people's attention, because it's like he doesn't fully mean what he says when he says like the big main issue, but then he explains what he actually means. But he does that for attention, right? And I mean, it works. Can't lie, it works. I mean, he's literally like the most controversial guy I've ever seen. I mean, the stuff that he's been through because of what he says is crazy. I've never seen anybody go through stuff like that, man. But like the things I agree with when I say core ideologies, as I said earlier, is like basically the Bible. He has very good knowledge of the Bible. He knows what it says. He follows it. He's a Catholic. And you know, what he says about masculinity, I believe in that too, where it's like taking up responsibility, and you know how men and women have different roles, stuff like that, things of that nature. I just want to clarify, just because I agree with his certain ideologies doesn't mean that I agree with everything that he says or every method that he uses, okay? I'm just pointing it out and telling you what I agree with from what I heard, because I don't know this guy as much as I should, also to make that clear. But from what he's explained about his situation, and from the people that the three podcast debates or whatever you want to call it that I watched, it was one debate, two podcasts, was one with this UFC fighter, which was that was pretty interesting. It was good. The one with Bradley Martin really got me interested, because that one, he really goes into like basically his upbringing and everything, and what he, you know, what he had to go through and all that stuff. That's how I kind of know about it. And then the debate with Dean Withers. And while you don't have to agree with everything someone says to learn from them, what I've learned from Fuentes is how important it is to speak boldly and to not fear offense when speaking truth, but also to measure the boldness against God's standard, not just to your own personality. Thing is, you do have to speak the truth in love. You can use humor, but you have to use it very wisely, because you don't want to come off as this arrogant, closed-minded person. You know what I'm saying? You have to embrace boldness, but without arrogance. That's how I see it. And what's your take on Nick Fuentes? I want to know in the comment section. I want to know what you guys think of him. If you guys even know of him, if this is your first time hearing of him, do you think boldness always helps the message, or sometimes could it hurt? Hope you guys like this video. Hope you guys liked what I had to say. Leave a like, subscribe, and let me know what you guys think.